are moments in life when everything feels quiet, but heavy. When nothing is technically wrong, yet something inside feels unfinished. You keep showing up. You keep trying. And still, it feels like the world isn't responding. This is where most people begin to question themselves. Not because they lack talent or strength, but because consistency feels invisible when results are slow. This story is about that silence, about the discipline of ordinary days, the courage to continue, and the hidden beauty of doing the same small thing again and again without applause. This is not a story about sudden success. It's about transformation that happens quietly, deeply, patiently. In a small town where dust settled gently on every surface, there lived a potter whose hands worked every day, long before his heart understood why. The potter's days began before the sun decided to rise. In the dim blue light of early morning, he would unlock his workshop, step inside, and close the door behind him, as if sealing himself away from the rest of the world. The room was small, earthy, familiar. Clay dust clung to the shelves, the floor, even the air, evidence of years spent shaping something from nothing. At the center of the room sat the wheel. Every day he pressed his foot down and felt it spin. The motion was smooth, almost comforting. His hands followed instinctively, guiding the soft clay as it rose, trembled, and slowly took form. Bowl after bowl, cup after cup, shapes born from repetition. From the outside, his life looked disciplined, honest, stable, but inside, something felt unfinished. He believed deeply in effort, in showing up, in doing the work even when motivation was low. Yet somewhere along the way, he had begun to believe something else, that consistency should speak back, that discipline should eventually be rewarded with clarity, recognition, or at least a sign that he was moving forward. Instead, every day looked the same. The market stalls sold his pottery steadily, but never eagerly. Customers nodded politely, praised the craftsmanship, and moved on. No one lingered. No one remembered his name. His work was useful, but invisible. As the wheel spun, his thoughts often drifted. He wondered if he was stuck, if patience had quietly turned into settling, if his journey was moving forward at all or simply circling the same place. And maybe you've felt this too. Doing the right things, living with discipline, yet secretly asking yourself, is this leading anywhere? At night, when the workshop fell silent, he studied the finished pieces lined neatly on the shelves. They were solid, reliable, but they didn't answer the question that weighed on him most. What is all this becoming? The wheel stopped spinning. Tomorrow it would begin again. It always did. But beneath the calm routine, doubt had begun to whisper, softly, persistently, testing his patience and his faith in the quiet power of consistency. Something shifted quietly after that season of doubt. Not in the world around him, but in the way the potter approached his work. He began to arrive even earlier, not because he was chasing recognition, but because discipline had become a refuge. When the town still slept, the wheel listened. It didn't judge. It didn't rush him. It simply waited. He studied his craft more closely now, the angle of his thumbs, the pressure of his palms, the exact moment when the clay wanted to rise and when it needed to be held back. He failed often in those mornings, collapsed rims, uneven walls, small imperfections that only he noticed. But slowly, something changed. The bowls became thinner, yet stronger, the curves more confident, the surfaces smoother, quieter, almost intentional. At the market, people began to pause a little longer. They lifted his work, turned it in their hands, nodded with genuine appreciation. A shop owner asked if he could make a matching set. A traveler returned weeks later, searching for another piece from that same potter. Hope crept back in. It felt fragile, like fresh clay, easily misshaped by expectation. Still, it was there, a sense that consistency was finally speaking, that discipline was beginning to reveal its reward. He stood taller, worked longer, dreamed bigger, and without realizing it, he started counting again. Counting compliments, counting sales, counting how close he might be to finally arriving. The wheel kept spinning. The work kept improving. But beneath the pride, a subtle shift occurred. His focus drifted from the process to the outcome, from the joy of shaping to the hunger for confirmation. This is how it often begins. Success doesn't ruin us. Expectation does. Still, in those days, the potter felt alive again, motivated, certain that his journey was finally moving forward and that consistency at last was paying him back. He did not yet see the flaw growing quietly beside his hope. The day everything broke did not arrive with warning. It looked like any other morning. The potter rose early, confident in his hands and certain in his direction. He had been working for months on a collection meant to mark a turning point. His best pieces yet. Cleaner lines, stronger forms. Proof, he believed, that his discipline had finally earned its reward. The kiln burned hotter than usual that night. When he opened it the next morning, the air rushed in, and his heart dropped. Cracks ran through the bowls like fractures in ice. Some had warped beyond repair, others had collapsed entirely, fused together in useless shapes. Weeks of effort, months of consistency, ruined in silence. He stood there, unmoving. At the market later that day, there was nothing to display. Customers noticed. Questions followed. Whispers lingered longer than compliments ever had. "Maybe next time," someone said kindly. But kindness did not soften the blow. The failure felt personal. Not just a mistake, but a message, as if the world had looked at his effort and answered with indifference. He replayed every step in his mind, the temperature, the timing, his hands, his choices, searching desperately for control in a moment that offered none. And beneath the technical questions, a deeper wound opened. If consistency isn't enough, then what is? That night, the workshop felt smaller, the shelves emptier, the wheel unbearably still. The confidence he had built so carefully cracked under the weight of one unforgiving moment. You know this feeling. When failure doesn't just take your results, it questions your worth. When discipline suddenly feels pointless. When the journey you trusted betrays you without explanation. The potter sat alone on the floor, clay dust on his hands, staring at nothing. His motivation drained quietly, replaced by a heavy, aching doubt. He had done everything right, and still, everything had fallen apart. After the failure, the potter stopped touching the wheel. Not all at once. At first, it was just a pause, a day to think, a moment to recover. But one day became many. The workshop remained open, yet strangely lifeless. Clay sat unused. Tools gathered dust. The wheel stood still as if waiting for permission that never came. The potter told himself he was being careful, learning from his mistake. But beneath that excuse lived something heavier. Fear. He replayed the moment endlessly. The sound of the kiln opening, the sight of ruined work, The quiet disappointment in people's eyes. Every memory sharpened the same question. What if I try again? And it happens again. So he clung to the past instead. He inspected old pieces, turning them over in his hands, remembering the days when progress felt certain. He adjusted notes, reread firing temperatures, tweaked plans that no longer mattered. It felt productive, but nothing moved forward. Time passed quietly. Outside, seasons shifted. Inside, nothing changed. The potter woke each morning with the weight of unfinished work pressing on his chest. Motivation faded, replaced by guilt. Guilt for stopping. Guilt for not knowing how to begin again. Guilt for doubting a journey he once trusted. And maybe you recognize this place. The space where effort turns into overthinking. Where discipline is replaced by hesitation. Where holding on feels safer than risking another fall. The wheel did not accuse him. The clay did not demand anything. Still, his silence grew louder each day. He believed he was protecting himself from failure, but slowly, invisibly, he was protecting himself from growth. Consistency doesn't vanish in dramatic moments. It fades in small decisions to wait just a little longer. And as the potter sat still, clinging to what once was, the journey he feared losing slipped quietly further away. The quiet did not arrive suddenly. It settled in the way dust does, slowly, gently, until everything was covered. Days passed without the wheel turning. The workshop stayed closed longer each morning. When the potter finally stepped inside, it felt unfamiliar, as if it belonged to someone else now. The smell of clay had faded. The air was cold. Still, he stopped going to the market. There was nothing to bring. No reason to explain himself. The town moved on easily, as towns always do. New hands filled old spaces. Other names were spoken. And in that absence, something inside him grew hollow. He spent long hours sitting near the window, watching light move across the floor, watching people live their lives without noticing his pause. The world did not wait for his healing. That truth hurt more than the failure itself. At night, silence pressed against him. Without the rhythm of work, his thoughts grew louder. Doubt repeated itself in different shapes. Maybe this was never meant to be. Maybe consistency only works for others. Maybe discipline doesn't change who you are. This was the lowest point. Not dramatic, not loud, just empty. No anger, no fight. Only a quiet surrender to stillness. And yet, in that emptiness, something subtle began to happen. Without distractions, he started to see his journey more clearly. Not just the failure, but everything that had come before it. The years of work, the small improvements, the pride he had tied to outcomes instead of effort. He realized he had been asking the wrong question. Not, why did this fail? But, why do I only feel worthy when it succeeds? That realization did not heal him, but it softened something. Sometimes the lowest point isn't where you break, it's where you finally stop pretending. In the silence of those days, the potter did nothing. And in doing nothing, he unknowingly made space for something new to enter. It happened on an ordinary afternoon. The potter had taken a walk beyond the edge of town, following a narrow path he hadn't used in years. There was no intention behind it, just a need to move, to feel air again. His steps were slow, unhurried, as if he had nowhere to arrive. That's when he noticed the old man. He sat beneath a tree, shaping something small in his hands. Not clay, wood. A simple block, slowly becoming a bowl. His movements were calm, unforced. There was no audience, no urgency. The potter stopped without realizing why. They exchanged a quiet greeting. Nothing more. For a while they sat in silence, the only sound the scrape of wood against blade. Finally, the potter spoke. "How long does it take to make one of those?" The old man smiled, still working. "As long as it takes." There was no wisdom in the words themselves, only the way they were said. The potter watched the man's hands, steady, unafraid of mistakes. When the wood cracked slightly, the old man didn't flinch. He adjusted, continued. "Doesn't it bother you?" the potter asked. "If it doesn't turn out right?" The old man looked up then. His eyes were kind, present. "I need make bowls to prove anything," he said. "I make them because this is how my hands remember who I am." Something loosened in the potter's chest. He realized how long it had been since his work felt like remembering rather than chasing. They parted without ceremony. No advice, no lesson spelled out. Yet as the potter walked home, the word stayed with him. "This is how my hands remember who I am." Sometimes truth doesn't arrive as instruction. It arrives as permission. The next morning, the potter unlocked his workshop. Not with excitement, not with hope, just with a quiet acceptance. The room greeted him with stillness, dust on the shelves, the wheel waiting exactly where he had left it. For the first time in a long while, he did not feel the weight of expectation press down on him. He sat, pressed his foot to the pedal. The wheel turned. He placed a small lump of clay at the center, not the best clay, not carefully measured, just enough. His hands moved slowly, uncertain at first, as if remembering a language he had almost forgotten. The clay wobbled. It always did. And this time he didn't correct it immediately. He let it lean. Let it resist. Let it be imperfect. There was no goal for the shape, no thought of markets or approval, only the quiet rhythm of breath and motion. The wheel spun. His palms adjusted. The clay rose, then collapsed slightly. He didn't stop. This was new. Failure no longer felt like an ending. It felt like information. Day after day, he returned, sometimes for hours, sometimes only for minutes. Some pieces were ruined, others survived. None were judged. Consistency returned, not as pressure, but as presence. In those small sessions, something healed. The fear loosened its grip. His discipline softened into devotion. He worked because it grounded him, because it made the noise in his mind quiet again. You might recognize this stage, the moment when you stop trying to win and start trying to live honestly, when discipline stops being punishment and becomes care, when the journey feels lighter even though the work remains the same. The potter didn't announce his return. No one noticed at first, but slowly his hands remembered. And this time, they were not trying to become anything more than what they already were. Consistency returned, but doubt did not disappear. Some mornings, the potter sat at the wheel and felt nothing. No calm, no clarity, just the old questions, waiting patiently. Is this enough? Is this going anywhere? The pieces he made now were honest but unremarkable. No sudden improvement, no visible breakthrough. The market remained quiet. Praise did not return. And that's when the old habits knocked again. The urge to rush, the temptation to measure, the quiet voice asking why he was still doing this. There were days he almost stopped, days when the wheel felt heavy, when discipline felt pointless again. But something had changed. He no longer expected consistency to reward him immediately. He stayed, even when the work felt flat, even when motivation faded, even when progress refused to announce itself. This was the real test, not failure, not success, but repetition without reassurance. Each time doubt rose, he remembered the old man's hands, calm, unafraid, not proving, just practicing. So he showed up again. Consistency became a choice he made daily, not a feeling he waited for. His strength was no longer loud. It was quiet, steady, unremarkable. And quietly, something else began to shift. The pieces gained a new balance, not perfect, but grounded. Customers began to linger again, not because the work was louder, but because it felt settled. This is what transformation often looks like. Not dramatic change, but subtle alignment. Not winning, but becoming. The potter understood now. Discipline isn't about forcing progress. It's about staying when the excitement leaves. Would you like me to expand? The change did not arrive as a celebration. There was no single moment when the potter looked at his work and thought, "I have made it." Instead, there was a morning when he realized he felt calm. The workshop felt alive again, not because it was busy, but because it was honest. Light poured through the window and rested on the shelves, now filled with pieces that carried a quiet confidence. Each bowl had its own character. Each imperfection felt intentional, accepted. He worked without checking the time. Some days he sold more. Some days he sold less. The difference no longer mattered. His sense of purpose had shifted inward. Discipline was no longer a tool to escape his life. It was how he lived it. People noticed the change before he did, not in numbers, in tone. Customers lingered. Conversations slowed. His work felt grounding to them, even if they couldn't explain why. The potter smiled more now, not because he was proud, but because he was present. And this is what peace looks like. Not the absence of struggle, but the absence of resistance. Not certainty, but trust in the journey. Not perfection, but belonging in your own rhythm. He understood now that consistency had never been about success. It was about becoming someone who could remain steady, through failure, through silence, through doubt. And maybe this is where you are headed too. Toward a life that doesn't demand proof. Toward a discipline that heals instead of exhausts. Toward a strength that feels like peace. The wheel kept turning. And for the first time, it felt like home. This is where the story gently turns toward you. Because the potter's journey was never only about clay or wheels or quiet workshops. It was about what happens when you keep showing up without demanding proof. When you let discipline become care. When you allow failure to teach instead of define you. Consistency is not loud. It does not rush. It does not promise quick rewards. It builds strength before it builds results. It heals before it transforms. It teaches patience before it reveals purpose. Sometimes motivation fades, and that's not weakness, that's human. What carries you forward then is discipline, softened by compassion, the courage to stay, the wisdom to let go of outcomes you cannot control. Failure will visit you, more than once, not to stop your journey but to remove what doesn't belong on it. Each setback asks the same quiet question. Will you continue, even without reassurance? Rebirth doesn't arrive as a miracle. It arrives as a habit, a return, a choice made again tomorrow. And peace, real peace, comes when you stop asking life to prove your worth. When your work becomes a way of remembering who you are, not escaping who you were afraid to be. If this story stayed with you, let it. If it reminded you of your own journey, honor that. And if you're standing at the wheel of your own life, uncertain, tired, but still willing, know this: consistency is already shaping something beautiful. Stay. Return tomorrow. The hidden beauty is forming. If this story resonated with you, share it with someone who needs quiet strength today. And if you'd like more stories like this, stay connected. Your journey matters.